For thousands of years, humanity believed it understood where power lived. It lived in palaces, in parliaments, in military headquarters. Power wore uniforms. It signed treaties. It appeared on television screens and spoke in carefully prepared sentences. History seemed simple. Kings commanded armies. Governments drew borders. Nations competed for land, resources, and influence. But quietly, something extraordinary began to happen. Power started moving. Not through elections. Not through revolutions. But through discovery. Inside laboratories filled with microscopes and sequencing machines, scientists began decoding something humanity had never fully understood before. Life itself. Not the poetry of life. Not the philosophy of life. The code of life. The discovery that living organisms were built from an information system written in molecular symbols changed everything. DNA was not merely chemistry. It was instruction. It was architecture. It was the operating system of every organism that had ever lived on Earth. And the moment humanity learned to read that system, a new form of power appeared. Because if life can be read, it can be edited. If it can be edited, it can be redesigned. And when the instructions of life become editable, power no longer belongs only to those who command armies or write laws. Power begins to belong to those who understand the code. Today, in the 21st century, an invisible transformation is unfolding. The most strategic resources on Earth are no longer only oil fields, rare minerals, or financial markets. They are genetic databases. Biological information. Genomic archives containing the molecular blueprints of plants, animals, microbes, and human beings. Inside these databases lies knowledge that can reshape medicine, agriculture, environmental systems, and even the evolutionary trajectory of our species. Yet the individuals who manage this knowledge rarely appear in political theater. They do not campaign for office. They do not debate on television. They operate quietly, in research institutions, sequencing centers, biotechnology companies, and global scientific networks. Some analysts have begun describing this phenomenon with a provocative phrase: biological shadow governance. Not a secret conspiracy. Not a hidden council controlling the world. Something more subtle. A structural shift in where the deepest forms of influence now reside. Because the people who understand how to read, analyze, and edit the code of life hold a kind of leverage that previous generations could barely imagine. And most of the world is only beginning to realize it. The turning point arrived in 1953. Two scientists uncovered the molecular structure of DNA. What they revealed was astonishing. Life was not governed by mysterious forces beyond comprehension. It was encoded. A double helix molecule containing a four-letter biochemical alphabet. Adenine. Cytosine. Guanine. Thymine. Four letters, arranged in sequences. And those sequences formed instructions. Instructions that told cells how to grow. How to repair themselves. How to build tissues. How to construct entire organisms. From the smallest bacterium to the human brain, the discovery transformed biology overnight. For centuries, scientists had studied living organisms from the outside. Now they could read them from the inside. And once something becomes readable, a new possibility appears. Programmability. At first, the tools were slow. Sequencing a single genome required enormous effort. Years of work. Massive funding. Teams of specialists. But technology evolves rapidly when information is involved. By the early 21st century, the Human Genome Project completed the first full map of human genetic instructions. The achievement represented more than a scientific milestone. It was the opening of an entirely new technological era. Sequencing machines became faster. Computers became more powerful. Costs collapsed. What once required decades could now be accomplished in hours. Biology was merging with information science. Genomes were digitized, stored in databases, compared using algorithms, analyzed using computational models. For the first time in history, living systems could be studied with the same analytical tools used to study complex software. Genes became data. Cells became systems. Life became information. And when life becomes information, the strategic implications expand dramatically. Because information can be copied. Information can be transmitted. Information can be modified. Suddenly, biology was no longer only about observing nature. It was about interacting with it. Directly. Deliberately. And that changed the geometry of power in ways the world is still trying to understand. As genomic science advanced, an invisible infrastructure began forming across the planet. Unlike roads, power grids, or telecommunications networks, this infrastructure could not be seen from satellites. Yet its influence was profound. It consisted of sequencing centers, biological databases, biotechnology laboratories, bioinformatics platforms, supercomputers analyzing genomic patterns across millions of organisms. Together, these systems formed something unprecedented. An information architecture of life. Inside these networks, scientists cataloged genetic information from plants, animals, bacteria, viruses, and human populations. Every sequence added another piece to a rapidly expanding library of biological knowledge. The implications reached far beyond academic curiosity. Pharmaceutical companies began designing medicines tailored to specific genetic pathways. Doctors explored personalized treatments based on the molecular characteristics of individual patients. Agricultural scientists engineered crops capable of surviving drought, resisting disease, and producing higher nutritional yields. Public health agencies integrated genomic sequencing into pandemic surveillance systems. When new viruses appeared, their genetic codes could be identified within days. Sometimes within hours. In an increasingly fragile world shaped by climate pressure, population growth, and emerging diseases, these capabilities became strategically essential. Biological knowledge was no longer simply scientific knowledge. It was infrastructure. Just as industrial societies depend on electricity and digital societies depend on the internet, modern civilization increasingly depends on biotechnology. And like any infrastructure, someone must maintain it. Someone must understand it deeply. Someone must guide its evolution. That responsibility has fallen to a relatively small global community. Molecular biologists, geneticists, bioengineers, computational biologists. Researchers whose expertise allows them to navigate the microscopic instructions that shape every living system. They are not rulers in the traditional sense, but in many ways, they have become custodians of civilization's biological operating system. A subtle asymmetry exists between political authority and scientific authority. Political power depends on public visibility. Scientific power depends on expertise. And expertise is often invisible. The complexity of modern biotechnology is immense. Understanding gene editing requires knowledge of enzymatic systems, cellular repair mechanisms, molecular pathways, and computational modeling. Technologies such as CRISPR allow scientists to cut and modify DNA with extraordinary precision. But the underlying mechanisms remain difficult for non-specialists to fully grasp. Even highly educated policymakers rely on scientific advisory panels when making decisions about genetic technology. This dependency creates an unusual dynamic. Governments control funding. But scientists define possibilities. They determine which research questions are feasible, which experiments are safe, which innovations deserve exploration. Within universities, research institutes, and international collaborations, these decisions are shaped through peer review systems and scientific consensus. The process is rigorous. It is also largely insulated from electoral cycles. While political administrations change every few years, scientific programs often span decades. Research continues. Data accumulates. Technologies mature. Gradually, a body of knowledge forms that influences policy, medicine, agriculture, and environmental management. The authority of these scientific communities does not come from secrecy. It comes from mastery. When a crisis emerges, a pandemic, an agricultural failure, a new disease, governments turn to the individuals who understand the underlying biological systems. Their recommendations shape national responses. Their models influence public health strategies. Their discoveries determine which solutions are even possible. In this sense, expertise itself becomes a structural form of influence. Not loud. Not theatrical. But deeply consequential. The modern biotechnology laboratory has become one of the most strategically important environments on Earth. Inside these laboratories, researchers perform experiments that would have seemed like science fiction only decades ago. Microbial genomes are redesigned to produce medicines. Cells are engineered to manufacture sustainable materials. Gene therapies are developed to correct inherited diseases. Scientists explore ways to strengthen crops against climate stress. They investigate methods for controlling invasive species through genetic interventions. They analyze viruses at the molecular level to design vaccines faster than ever before. Each experiment represents a small step. But collectively, these steps are reshaping the technological landscape of civilization. Artificial intelligence has accelerated this transformation dramatically. Machine learning systems now analyze genomic data sets containing billions of molecular sequences. Algorithms detect patterns that human researchers would never notice. Protein folding models predict the three-dimensional structures of biological molecules. Drug discovery timelines shrink from decades to years. In these hybrid laboratories, where molecular biology meets artificial intelligence, the pace of discovery increases exponentially. The boundaries of what is technically possible expand year after year. Yet governance systems often struggle to keep pace. Regulations must be written. Ethical frameworks must be debated. International agreements must be negotiated. Meanwhile, research continues. New techniques appear. New capabilities emerge. The frontier moves forward. And the individuals operating on that frontier occupy a unique position. They are the first to glimpse possibilities that the rest of society has not yet imagined. As humanity moves deeper into the 21st century, the geography of power is quietly changing. Traditional geopolitics revolved around territory. Control of land. Access to oceans. Strategic resources buried beneath the ground. But biological knowledge introduces a different kind of geography. A geography defined by research capacity. Genomic databases. Scientific talent. Nations that invest heavily in biotechnology build powerful innovation ecosystems. Universities train new generations of geneticists. Laboratories generate discoveries. Companies translate those discoveries into practical technologies. Sequencing centers accumulate biological data at unprecedented scale. Together, these elements form networks of biological capability. And those networks influence the stability of entire societies. Food systems depend on agricultural biotechnology. Healthcare systems depend on genomic medicine. Pandemic defense depends on rapid biological analysis. Environmental resilience increasingly depends on understanding complex ecosystems at the genetic level. In this emerging landscape, influence no longer flows only through political institutions. It flows through knowledge systems. Through laboratories. Through data. Through the individuals capable of interpreting the molecular instructions that govern life itself. These individuals rarely appear in headlines. Their work unfolds quietly. Yet the consequences are immense. Because within the sterile glow of sequencing machines and computational screens, humanity is learning not only how life works, but how it might one day be redesigned. And the communities who hold that knowledge now stand at the center of what many researchers call the biological century. A century in which the deepest form of power may no longer be the control of territory, but the understanding of life's code. There is a moment in every technological era when a society begins to sense that something fundamental has changed, even before it fully understands what that change means. During the Industrial Revolution, that moment arrived when machines began replacing human muscle. During the Digital Revolution, it arrived when computers began replacing human calculation. Today, a quieter moment is unfolding. A moment when humanity is beginning to realize that the deepest systems of life itself are becoming readable, searchable, and increasingly, editable. And when the underlying instructions of biology become accessible to technology, the consequences ripple far beyond the laboratory. Because biological knowledge does not behave like ordinary knowledge. It accumulates slowly, across decades of research, but once it reaches a certain threshold, it begins to compound. Every genome sequenced expands the biological library of humanity. Every protein structure predicted expands the understanding of cellular machinery. Every genetic experiment reveals another fragment of the operating system that governs living systems. At first glance, this process appears purely scientific. But history repeatedly demonstrates that knowledge of fundamental systems eventually transforms entire civilizations. Understanding electricity transformed industry. Understanding nuclear physics transformed geopolitics. Understanding digital computation transformed communication and global economics. Now, humanity is approaching a similar threshold with biology. And as this threshold approaches, a new layer of influence quietly emerges. Not political influence. Not financial influence, but informational influence over the most sophisticated system on Earth, life itself. Consider for a moment what modern genomic databases actually represent. They are not simply collections of research data. They are libraries of evolutionary history. Within these databases are the genetic blueprints of millions of organisms, some of which evolved over hundreds of millions of years. Each genome contains solutions that nature has tested through countless generations. Solutions to environmental stress. Solutions to disease resistance. Solutions to metabolic efficiency. To scientists trained in molecular biology, these genomes are not merely records of life. They are design manuals. Hidden within them are molecular mechanisms capable of producing new medicines, resilient crops, biodegradable materials, and biological manufacturing systems. In effect, the natural world has been conducting experiments for billions of years. Modern biotechnology is learning how to read the results. This is why genomic data has become one of the most strategically valuable forms of information in existence. Unlike traditional resources, genetic information can be copied without depletion. It can be analyzed endlessly. It can reveal biological mechanisms that can then be replicated or adapted through engineering. Yet interpreting this information requires extraordinary expertise. The genome of a single organism may contain billions of molecular letters. Understanding how those letters interact requires not only biological knowledge but also advanced mathematics, computer science, and statistical modeling. This is where the convergence of artificial intelligence and biotechnology becomes particularly significant. Machine learning systems can analyze patterns within genetic sequences that are far too complex for human researchers to identify manually. By comparing thousands or millions of genomes simultaneously, algorithms can identify hidden relationships between genes, diseases, environmental adaptations, and cellular processes. These discoveries often appear quietly in scientific journals. But their implications can be enormous. A single insight into a protein structure can lead to new classes of medicine. A discovery about microbial metabolism can lead to sustainable manufacturing processes. A genetic adaptation observed in one species may inspire entirely new agricultural technologies. To the outside observer, these developments appear incremental. Inside research communities, however, they represent a rapidly expanding map of biological capability. And maps change how societies navigate the world. The more detailed the map becomes, the more precisely researchers can design interventions within living systems. Gene editing technologies illustrate this transformation particularly clearly. Tools such as CRISPR allow scientists to locate specific segments of DNA and modify them with remarkable precision. In practical terms, this means genetic errors responsible for inherited diseases can potentially be corrected. Cells can be programmed to recognize and destroy cancer. Crops can be engineered to survive environmental conditions that would previously have destroyed entire harvests. Microorganisms can be designed to produce medicines, fuels, and industrial compounds. Each of these possibilities represents a shift in how humans interact with biology. Instead of merely adapting to natural systems, humanity is gradually learning to redesign them. But redesigning life is not simply a technical challenge. It is a profound responsibility. Because biological systems are interconnected in ways that are often difficult to predict. A small genetic modification can ripple through ecosystems, populations, or cellular networks in unexpected ways. For this reason, the scientific communities working in advanced biotechnology operate under strict ethical and regulatory frameworks. Research proposals undergo extensive review. Experiments must satisfy biosafety protocols. International guidelines govern sensitive forms of genetic research. These structures exist because scientists themselves understand the magnitude of the capabilities they are developing. The knowledge required to alter life carries enormous potential for benefit, but also demands careful stewardship. In many ways, the individuals who work at the forefront of biotechnology resemble engineers maintaining a vast and delicate system. A system that spans agriculture, medicine, environmental stability, and the biological foundations of human health. They operate within a global network of universities, research institutes, public laboratories, and private biotechnology companies. Information flows continuously through this network. Discoveries made in one laboratory are replicated in another. Data generated on one continent is analyzed by researchers on another. The system functions less like a hierarchy and more like a distributed intelligence. Thousands of specialists contributing pieces to a rapidly evolving understanding of life. To the broader public, much of this activity remains invisible. Scientific papers rarely receive headlines. Laboratory breakthroughs often take years before they translate into practical technologies. Yet beneath the surface, a profound accumulation of knowledge is taking place. And knowledge, once accumulated, tends to change the world. Consider the implications for medicine alone. For most of human history, doctors treated diseases based on symptoms. Now, medicine is moving toward treatments designed around the molecular causes of those diseases. Genomic analysis allows physicians to identify specific mutations responsible for certain conditions. Therapies can then be tailored to correct or compensate for those mutations. This approach, often called precision medicine, represents a shift from generalized treatment to individualized care. In oncology, for example, cancer is increasingly understood not as a single disease but as a collection of genetic disorders affecting cellular growth. Understanding the genetic profile of a tumor can determine which treatments are most likely to be effective. The same principle extends to many other conditions. Neurological disorders, autoimmune diseases, rare genetic syndromes. In each case, the deeper scientists understand the biological instructions involved, the more targeted the solutions can become. Similar transformations are occurring in agriculture. Feeding a global population that may exceed 10 billion people within this century presents enormous challenges. Climate instability threatens traditional crop patterns. Water scarcity affects farming regions around the world. Agricultural biotechnology offers tools for addressing these pressures. Plants can be engineered to tolerate drought, to resist pests without heavy chemical use, to produce higher nutritional content, to thrive in soils previously considered unsuitable for farming. These innovations can stabilize food systems in ways that traditional breeding alone could not achieve quickly enough. Again, the underlying factor is knowledge. The ability to understand and modify the genetic instructions guiding plant development. Environmental science is undergoing a similar transformation. Researchers are exploring biological methods for restoring ecosystems damaged by pollution or climate stress. Microorganisms capable of breaking down plastics. Algae engineered to capture carbon dioxide. Bacteria designed to detoxify contaminated water sources. Each of these approaches relies on the same fundamental insight. Life is programmable, within limits. And understanding those limits is one of the defining scientific challenges of our time. Yet perhaps the most profound consequence of modern biotechnology is philosophical. For centuries, humanity viewed life as something fundamentally beyond deliberate design. Evolution operated through natural selection over vast timescales. Human beings could observe it, but rarely influence it directly. Today that boundary is shifting. Slowly. Cautiously. But undeniably. Humanity is beginning to participate in shaping biological systems at a molecular level. This does not mean controlling evolution. But it does mean influencing certain outcomes. Preventing hereditary diseases. Enhancing agricultural resilience. Designing biological manufacturing processes that reduce environmental harm. These capabilities are still developing. But their trajectory suggests that the coming decades will bring advances that redefine the relationship between technology and life. And that brings us back to the quiet communities of experts who work within this domain. Their influence does not resemble traditional political power. They do not govern societies. They do not command armies. Yet the knowledge they cultivate shapes the boundaries of what future societies will be able to do. In that sense, they serve as stewards of a profound and delicate frontier. The frontier where biology becomes engineering. Where information becomes life. Where the deepest instructions of nature are no longer entirely beyond human understanding. And perhaps the most remarkable aspect of this transformation is how quietly it unfolds. No grand ceremonies mark each discovery. No political speeches accompany every breakthrough. Instead, progress accumulates through patient research, careful experimentation, and global collaboration among scientists who often remain unknown outside their fields. But within laboratories across the world, illuminated by the soft glow of computer screens and sequencing machines, humanity is gradually learning how the code of life works. And as that understanding deepens, it will shape medicine, agriculture, environmental stewardship, and human potential in ways that future generations may one day view as one of the most significant transformations in the history of civilization. If you have stayed here until this moment, it means something inside you was listening long before your mind finished processing the words. Not curiosity alone. Something quieter than that. A part of you that still pauses when an idea feels larger than ordinary conversation, when a question opens a window rather than closing an argument. The world today moves quickly. Information rushes past us in endless streams of headlines, notifications, and opinions. And in that noise, it becomes easy to forget that the human mind was never designed only to consume information. It was designed to seek meaning. Deep inside the brain, beyond logic, beyond language, there are neural systems that respond not just to facts, but to patterns of understanding. Moments when something aligns, when a thought feels both new and strangely familiar. Those moments are rare. They are the moments when the mind grows. But something even more delicate happens at the same time. When an idea truly reaches us, it does not stop at the intellect. It travels further, into the emotional circuits of the brain, into memory, into the quiet territory where curiosity and wonder still live. That is where reflection begins. And reflection is one of the most powerful capacities human beings possess. It is what allows a person to step outside the momentum of everyday life, to observe the world more carefully. And sometimes to see connections that were invisible before. Every generation inherits a universe filled with unanswered questions. Some people pass through those questions quickly. Others pause. They look more closely. They listen more carefully. They allow their thoughts to wander beyond the surface of things. History has always been shaped by those quiet observers. Not always the loudest voices, but often the most attentive minds. If something in this exploration resonated with you, even subtly, then perhaps you recognize that same impulse. The impulse to understand a little more deeply. To explore ideas that sit just beyond the familiar. And in a world that often rewards speed more than reflection, choosing to think slowly, carefully, and honestly is already something remarkable. So wherever you are listening from, whether this moment found you late at night, during a quiet pause in the day, or simply in a brief window of curiosity, know that the simple act of reflecting on ideas is never insignificant. It is one of the ways human beings expand the horizon of what they understand about the world, and about themselves. Sometimes, all it takes is one thoughtful moment. One idea that lingers. One quiet spark of curiosity. And from there, the mind continues its journey.